Welcome back to another English lesson. Some sad news out of our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. It appears that a small plane crashed into a Black Hawk helicopter. This only happened a few hours ago, so all of the details are not clear yet. But in this English lesson, we will watch a news clip. Of course, they will use advanced vocabulary, English idioms, some pesky English phrasal verbs, and then I will come back and teach those difficult terms. In this English lesson, you will learn terms like tragedy. We will use fear as a verb. We'll talk about a collision and we'll use the verb collide. We will talk about Reagan National Airport. We will also talk about the man who the airport is named after. We'll talk about the Potomac River. Do you know what a dozen is? If you don't now, you will by the end of this English lesson. We will talk about the difference between search and rescue and search and recovery in English. Do you know the word frigid? We'll talk about the adjective grim. We will talk about the city, Wichita, Kansas. Do you know what it means if somebody takes the lead? You will learn all of that and more. Before we take a look at the news clip, could you please hit that like button? It will tell YouTube that they should show this English lesson to other English learners. And if this is your first time here, go ahead and subscribe so you never miss another English lesson.
A tragedy in the nation's capital. Dozens are feared dead after a mid-air collision right near Reagan National Airport.
We want to show you some live pictures from the scene this morning. Investigators are saying an American Airlines regional jet collided with a military Black Hawk helicopter, with both aircraft ending up in the Potomac River. This happened just before 9 last night.
They mentioned the word tragedy in the news clip, and for each of those difficult terms, I will have a picture. I will use that term in a sentence, and then I will have the official definition. Let's look at tragedy first. It is a very sad event, often involving death or suffering. The collision between the airplane and the helicopter was a tragedy that affected many families. As I record this now, it seems there are no survivors. Nobody lived through the collision. So tragedy is the noun, but the adjective is tragic. And it's pretty much the same thing as tragedy. You can see sadness and sorrow. Let's use tragic in a sentence. The tragic accident led to a nationwide mourning. Notice the way mourning is spelled in that sentence. We are not talking about the beginning of the day. We are talking about the sadness you feel after somebody has died. You might know fear as an emotion, as a noun, but we are going to talk about it as a verb. You might hear the term feared the worst. And to fear means to be afraid that something bad might have happened. Many people feared that there were no survivors after the crash. A little later in the news clip, you will meet a man who fears his wife was on that plane. It is super sad. I can't believe reporters found him and were able to interview him. He seemed so alone.
A tragedy in the nation's capital. Dozens are feared dead after a mid-air collision right near Reagan National Airport.
We want to show you some live pictures from the scene this morning. Investigators are saying an American Airlines regional jet collided with a military Black Hawk helicopter, with both aircraft ending up in the Potomac River. This happened just before 9 last night as that airliner was coming into land. News 6's Mark Lehman's been following the overnight updates. Mark, there are reports more than a dozen bodies have been pulled out of the water.
I have used this word collision already. Let's get the official definition. It's when two objects hit each other with force. And if you take a look at that picture, there was a collision between those two cars. But that's not what happened in Washington, D.C. Let's take a look at this sentence. The collision between the jet and the helicopter occurred over the Potomac River. Don't worry, we will talk about that river in just a minute. Collision is the noun. You can have a collision, but the verb is collide, and it means to crash into each other. The two aircraft collided in midair near the airport, and we will talk about what aircraft means a little later.
Tragedy in the nation's capital. Dozens are feared dead after a mid-air collision right near Reagan National Airport.
This tragic event happened just outside Reagan National Airport. And Reagan National Airport is a major airport located in Washington, D.C., our capital. The flight was approaching Reagan National Airport when the accident happened. Well, where did that airport get its name? It got its name from this guy, Ronald Reagan, the 40th president of the United States, after whom the airport is named. Ronald Reagan served as president from 1981 to 1989.
We want to show you some live pictures from the scene this morning. Investigators are saying an American Airlines regional jet collided with a military Black Hawk helicopter, with both aircraft ending up in the Potomac River. This happened just before 9 last night as that airliner was coming in to land. News 6's Mark Lehman's been following the overnight updates. Mark, there are reports more than a dozen bodies have been pulled out of the water.
Yeah, a police official at the scene told CBS News that at least 18 bodies were recovered.
In the news report, they used the term investigators. Let's talk about what investigators are. They are people who examine events to find out what happened. You might see investigators at a crime scene. They are trying to figure out what happened. They are trying to answer all of the questions about that crime. Let's use investigators in a sentence. Investigators are looking into the cause of the crash. Let's talk about what a regional jet is. So you might hear airplane, plane, or jet. They all pretty much mean the same thing. Sometimes I think jets might be a little quicker than planes, but not always. But a regional jet is a small airplane used for short distant flights. The regional jet was flying from Wichita, that's a funny city to say, Wichita to Washington, D.C. So you wouldn't take a regional jet from Washington, D.C. to Paris. That is too long of a flight. You have to fly over the Atlantic Ocean. You need to take a bigger plane to fly such a long distance. Or you could say a bigger jet. And it did collide with a Black Hawk helicopter. In the picture, Black Hawk is one word, but I think it is actually two words, like right down there. A Black Hawk helicopter is a type of military helicopter used by the U.S. Army. The Black Hawk helicopter was on a training mission when the accident occurred. And helicopters don't have wings. Right at the top of the helicopter, we would call those things blades. And aircraft, that's just pretty much airplanes, helicopters, anything that flies. But let's get the official definition. Any vehicle that can fly, such as airplanes and helicopters. Both aircraft were severely damaged in the incident. And this tragic accident happened over the Potomac River. The Potomac River is a river that flows through Washington, D.C. The wreckage fell into the Potomac River after the collision.
Mark, There are reports more than a dozen bodies have been pulled out of the water.
Yeah, a police official at the scene told CBS News that at least 18 bodies were recovered. Both aircraft were transporting a total of 67 people at the time of impact. And right now, a massive search and rescue effort is ongoing.
I know I have talked about dozen on this channel before, so maybe this is review, but a dozen is a group of 12. Rescue teams recovered over 24 bodies from the river. Super, super sad. I am sure there will be more than 2 times 12. 24 bodies. I think the final count will be more like 60 or 70. It doesn't look like anyone survived the crash. AI created this picture. I don't think there are quite 12 donuts there or eggs, but in the United States, you can buy eggs by the dozen and you can buy donuts by the dozen. I don't suggest you eat 12 donuts at one time, but hey, you do you. I am not a doctor. I am only an English teacher. Recovered. Recovered means to find and bring back something lost, especially a body after an accident. Divers recovered several bodies from the crash site. Keep that word recovered in mind because in a little bit, we will change that to recovery.
Yeah, a police official at the scene told CBS News that at least 18 bodies were recovered. Both aircraft were transporting a total of 67 people at the time of impact.
They also used impact in the news clip. I thought that might be new for you. It is the action of one object hitting another. And I used the same picture that we used for collision because collision and impact are pretty much the same thing. The impact of the collision caused both aircraft to crash.
And right now, a massive search and rescue effort is ongoing. Earthcam video shows the moment a passenger jet and an Army helicopter collided in midair. It was just before 9 last night near Washington, D.C.'s Reagan National Airport.
I am sure you know the word big in English. Massive is pretty much a synonym. It means almost the same thing. Here is the official definition. Very large in size or amount. In that picture, you can see a massive iceberg. Yeah, we would call that thing in the picture an iceberg. Here is a sentence using massive. There was a massive response from emergency services after the accident. If you watch the news after tragedies, you might hear these terms: search and rescue and search and recovery. They are not the same thing. Search and rescue means operations to find and help people in danger. So if there is a search and rescue mission going on, they are hoping to find people still alive. Search and rescue teams worked through the night to find survivors. Survivors are people who lived. If you look at this picture, it looks like an earthquake has occurred. People are looking through the rubble to find survivors. You can see there is a rescue dog there sniffing around, smelling to see if people are still alive. But search and recovery is very different. They are now using big machines because they don't think anyone survived. Here, they still have to be careful just in case people are still alive under all the debris. Let's get a definition for search and recovery. Operations to find and retrieve bodies after an accident. They are not looking for survivors. After determining there were no survivors, the mission shifted to search and recovery. They can work a little more quickly if it's search and recovery. They don't have to be as careful. It's very sad when it changes from search and rescue to search and recovery. My heart really goes out to all of those family members who lost somebody. But in the news clip, they talked about the approach of the airplane. Let's get the official definition. The path an aircraft follows when coming into land. And that piece of land that an airplane lands on is something we call the runway. Let's use it in a sentence. The jet was on its final approach to the airport when the collision happened.
EarthCam video shows the moment a passenger jet and an Army helicopter collided in midair. It was just before 9 last night near Washington, D.C.'s Reagan National Airport.
Accident happened in the river. Both the helicopter and the plane crashed in the river. It's east of the approach end of runway 33.
The crash triggering a frantic search in the frigid waters of the Potomac River. The effort growing more grim by the hour.
Frantic. I'm sure there were many family members who were frantic after hearing the news. It means done in a hurried and anxious way. The man in the picture definitely looks frantic. Families made frantic calls seeking information about their loved ones. Maybe you are late for work, you can't find your cell phone. Maybe you do a frantic search looking for your cell phone. We talked about massive earlier, which is another way to say big. Let's talk about another way to say cold, and that is frigid. Frigid. It simply means very cold. Rescue operations were challenging due to the frigid water temperatures. Yeah, a huge shout out to those people who risked their life to recover those bodies in the Potomac River.
The crash triggering a frantic search in the frigid waters of the Potomac River. The effort growing more grim by the hour.
They use the term grim, and I'm going to add task, a grim task. It means a very sad and serious job. Recovering bodies from the crash site was a grim task for the responders. And if you don't know what responders are, don't worry, we will talk about them in just a minute.
So it's a highly complex operation. The conditions out there are extremely rough for the responders.
American Airlines says PSA operated Flight 5342 from Wichita, Kansas was trying to land at the time. 64 people were on board. A man told a local CBS affiliate he believed his wife was on the plane.
She texted me that they were landing in 20 minutes. The rest of my text did not get delivered.
The Army says the Black Hawk helicopter involved was on a training flight with 3 service members on board.
Highly complex. It means very complicated and difficult to understand or deal with. I don't know about you, but I am not good at math. That looks like a highly complex math problem. Let's use highly complex in a sentence. The investigation into the crash is highly complex. Anytime you're dealing with a crash site and water, it has to be super confusing. It has to be highly complex. There you go. I told you we would talk about responders, and here they are. They are people who come to help when there's an emergency. First responders, you might hear that term too. First responders arrived quickly at the scene of the accident. And in the picture, it looks like there are firefighters, police officers, maybe some paramedics. Paramedics are like doctors who ride in an ambulance.
The conditions out there are extremely rough for the responders.
American Airlines says PSA operated Flight 5342 from Wichita, Kansas was trying to land at the time. 64 people were on board. A man told a local CBS affiliate he believed his wife was on the plane.
She texted me that they were landing in 20 minutes. The rest of my text did not get delivered.
The Army says the Black Hawk helicopter involved was on a training flight with 3 service members on board. Multiple agencies are now investigating, with the National Transportation Safety Board taking the lead. Over the coming days, investigators will try to piece together the aircraft's final moments before the collision. Meanwhile, the search continues in the Potomac River, and as that's happening, all air traffic in and out of Reagan National has been halted for the next several hours.
Wichita, Kansas. It is like right in the middle of the country. Last week on this channel, I asked if anyone knew where Nebraska was. So many people did. I was surprised. Maybe you also know about Kansas. It's right next to Nebraska. But Wichita, Kansas is a city in the central United States where the flight began. Here is a close-up picture of Kansas. You can see other states like Missouri, Iowa, Colorado, and that state we talked about earlier, Nebraska. Let's read a sentence that has Wichita, Kansas in it. The flight took off from Wichita, Kansas, heading to Washington, D.C. They talked about service members on that Black Hawk helicopter. Service members are people who are part of the military. Sadly, 3 service members were on board the Black Hawk helicopter. It does appear that all 3 service members died. They use the term multiple. It just means more than one. Several. Multiple agencies are involved in the investigation. Take a look at that picture. It looks like she might be from Afghanistan. There is an Afghani flag there, but it also looks like she has had multiple cups of coffee. I'm sure she has a lot of caffeine in her. I'm sure she is very caffeinated right about now. They talked about take the lead. Let's get the official definition for take the lead. Taking charge or being the most important in an effort. We have a meeting going on in this picture, and it looks like the man standing has taken the lead of the meeting. Halt. Do you know that verb? Halted means stopped or paused something. Paused means you stop it for a short period of time. All flights were halted for a short period of time at Reagan National Airport after the accident. Okay, that was a sad one, but congratulations for making it to the end. You now know about 30 more English terms. Maybe you are not done and you want to learn more English with plane crashes. Super sad stuff, but right below is an English lesson I did about a plane crash in South Korea. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.